Take two. Go. Welcome to the PSR Draft League, Pokemon Speedruns Draft League. This is going to be a little introduction to the league itself, a little bit of how to draft, and basically how to use the league document, and plus another couple of resources that you can use throughout the season to either be ultra competitive, or maybe if you want to take it a little bit slower, have a little more fun with it. Just hopefully there's a good mix here for everybody. So let's go ahead and get into what your draft is going to look like. Right here, this is your rosters page. Down here on the document, it's going to be across the bottom. So you're going to be drafting one Tier 1 Mon, one Tier 2 Mon, two Tier 3 Mons, one Tier 4 Mon, one Tier 5 Mon, one Mega, and then you're going to get 4 free picks. Now, all of these come from this tiers and availability page. Your Tier 1s are here. They're some of your more either versatile or extremely just really good Mons. A lot of them have good type coverage in offensive and defensive prowesses. So you get stuff like Garchomp. That's a pretty nice pick. Landos, Thunderuses, Torntherian, Zygarde. Then you have your Tier 2s. They're going to be worth 60 points for your free picks. Tier 1's worth 90. Tier 3s are worth 50. Tier 4s are worth 30. Tier 5s are 20. And there's a whole hell of a lot of them because they all suck. And then your Megas, when you draft a Mega, you essentially get points added back to your draft. So if you get a Tier 1 Mega, they're not worth any points. You neither gain nor lose points for drafting the Tier 1 Megas. They're your more powerful ones. They typically are Megas that you can really build a team around. Tier 2, some of them are a little more supportive. They're a little less team-centric. And you get an extra 20 to your draft cap for that. Tier 3s kind of suck. They get you 30 back. And Tier 4s really suck, and they get you 40 back. So that's just how your roster is going to be built. Now, when it comes to drafting, there are a whole bunch of things that you need to take into account. And it's all based on team composition. So what kind of team are you looking to make? There are 3 main types of draft viable builds, composition builds, that you see. They are balanced, hyper offense, and bulky offense. And no, they're not the same. So balanced, you're going to typically see a balanced set of stat distributions, a balanced set of roles. You're going to have Mons with all different types of roles that some of them overlap. But for the most part, you get a bunch of supporters, offensive Mons, defensive Mons, etc. And defensive typings. So they have good team synergy, especially in their cores. And we'll get to cores in just a second. So balanced teams are usually made up of a set of offensive and support Mons, and then a defensive core. So your cores are like 3 or 4 Mons that you put together that have really nice type coverage, defensive synergy with each other. So one of the most common core that you'll see is a Firewater Grass core. A good example of a Firewater Grass core would be you have Slowbro, Tangrowth, and Heatran. So Slowbro, Tangrowth provide regeneration for each other and really good type coverage in between. And Heatran is a good add-on, especially because it resists... What does Heatran do in this scenario? Hold on. Heatran really benefits from that core. But what does it gain? Just not thought of that. You have another common type combo is Dragon Steel Fairy. So stuff like Clefairy, Clefable, Kyurem Black, Ferrothorn, Skarmory. They all pair pretty well with each other because the resistances match up with each other. Then another core, a little less common, definitely more offensive, but it still works, especially because of immunities, is Dark Psychic Fighting. And an example of that, more of an offensive core, you have Crocodile, Celebi, and Machamp. So Machamp resists the bug that Celebi is extremely weak to. Celebi resists Celebi resists the fighting types that Crook is weak to, and Crook really resists the what the heck? Why didn't I write that down? So essentially, offensively, they all hit what the other cannot hit, and defensively, each of them provides something to the table that the others. Crook is immune to the Psychic that Machamp is weak to. How about that one? That's it. So when you're building a core, you don't necessarily have to focus on specific type combinations, but you also have abilities. So you get stuff like Levitate, Lightning Rod, Flash Fire, Water Absorb, Storm Drain, different abilities like that that provide an immunity, or stuff like Thick Fat that can also provide a resistance. So you really need to make use of your abilities if you're going to build a good core. And you usually find good solid cores in either balanced or the bulky offense teams. But if you're using hyper offense, you're looking less at defensive synergy and more towards offensive synergy. And when it comes to hyper offense, you're going to see a few more immunities. If you see a type that you're relatively weak to, you're kind of going to want to look for either an immunity or a quad resist, if you will. So these hyper offenses are, they usually consist of 3 or 4 either like setup mons or just really powerful Pokemon, a couple of support mons, and then maybe a threat counter or two, especially when you're building your overall team. So a typical hyper offense team in a draft league format, a lot of them tend to focus around weather. So you have a sand team, which is like a Tyranitar and a Hippowdon. Most of them you'll see run Excadrill. They can run stuff like Sand Slash, another rock type that can abuse a special defense boost, stuff like that. You have the rain teams, which typically have a fast, powerful electric type, maybe a Swift Swim Sweeper or two. And note, Swift Swim is not banned in the Draft League format, and a lot of that it has to do with because you know your opponent's team every week, you can better counter them. But it also makes some other mons more broken than others because of their versatility, and we'll get to that a little bit later. And you also have Sun teams. Sun teams typically have Torkoal plus 1 or 2 Chlorophyll Sweepers, maybe a flying type or 2 to help deal with the ground problem, and definitely a ground type for the rock problem, and flying issues that come about with having grass types. Another good hyper offense team utilizes what you would call a Volt Turn core as Volt Switch U-Turn, and typically those run maybe a Hazard Setter or 2, good hazard control. But when you're running Hazard Setters on hyper offense, you really want to focus on Rapid Spin rather than Defog, because you really want to keep your own hazards up. So a good member of a hyper offense Volt Turn team would be like, say, Fortress, because Fortress gets Rapid Spin, access to hazards, and it also helps generate your Volt Turn with a slow Volt Switch. And a lot of these can use trapping, so like Doug Trio, Pursuit Trappers, etc. just to take out specific threats so that maybe a sweepermon or two can sweep. Bulky offense is the third type of team. It still focuses on offense, but it also tends to lean more on bulk. Earlier, I mentioned a Dragonsteel Fairy. So a good core for that bulky offense would be the Azumarill, Kyurem Black, and Ferrothorn makes a good partner in that matchup because it does have a lot of tanky ability, but it also can have a little bit of say in offense and momentum giving. Usually the bulky offense has a dedicated cleric and definitely solid hazard control. Most of the time in the form of defog in this case, especially because defog clears screens, which really hinders bulky offense. So earlier I mentioned, I've just finished mentioning clerics and hazard control. So a lot of mons in the upper tiers, as I said, they tend to have a little bit of versatility. You see stuff like Lottie, Manaphy, Mew. They can perform a multitude of different roles for a team. And I've compiled a little bit of a list with the help of Sir Erendite. We created a little roles chart for every mon in each tier. So if you want to take a look at this, I'll leave the link in the description of the YouTube video below. So if you want to check this out, feel free. It's going to be very useful. How to use this page is you have the mon, what roles it can perform. We went ahead and put whether or not it can be used as a cleric. Most of the time it's going to be heal bell, aromatherapy. Sometimes you get wish, healing wish. And then what type of hazards they have. So Altaria gets defog, Archeops gets stealth rocks and defog. So all this stuff is listed here. So if you want to take a look, it can be really useful if you want to build a more balanced team. So I mentioned type synergy. You kind of want to keep it as balanced as possible in a draft format. You don't want, say, your opponent to just bring a set of 3 moves that just kills your entire team. You really don't want to be majorly susceptible to sweeps. So one of the things that I've developed here on this page with help of some other people is you have a type matchup at the bottom. So if you take a look at your draft, your roster, when it's set, you'll know the stats of each Pokemon on your team. Here it just averages it out. So if you want to balance your stats, you can look and see, oh, say I'm weak in defense. Maybe I need to get a more defensive, physically defensive Pokemon or more especially defensive Pokemon to help balance these stats out so that my opponent doesn't take advantage of a really weak either defense or special defense or a really weak attack or special attack. Because a lot of that can make a difference in team building and how you or your opponent will prep for each other. And also you get to take a look at your type matchups here. I did test this. It's all correct. With the exception of abilities, because abilities are all optional. And you also, when you're looking at your roster, look at offensive synergy. So what type of coverage moves can I get? Can I make up for something other than with just a hidden power? So there's the quote that I used is, "Can I hit everything with a combination of 6 Pokemon?" So you really want to pay attention to that. Now, here's the draft page. We do a snake format, so whoever drafts first is going to draft last in the next round. In our case, we're probably gonna have 14 people in the league, so whoever drafts the first one is gonna get draft pick number 28, and whoever drafts 14 is also gonna get pick 15 as well. So just stuff to keep in mind when you're drafting. Let's see. There probably going to be snipes. So whenever you are building a core, you also want to keep in mind, okay, if I have this these two mons is my focus. I need a third mon or so that I want to fill in. If somebody drafts X before me, I need to have, or I want to look at Y as an alternate. So, for instance, I was actually in a league that I was looking to draft Decidueye because I needed a good kind of bulky grass type, but I also had a kind of an offensive Volt Turn team. I had, let's see, at the time I had Flygon and Mesprit, yeah, but I needed a grass type. So I was looking at Decidueye and its Baton Pass. But the actual pick before me grabbed Decidueye. So I picked up Amoonguss because it's another good bulky grass type. It kind of performs different roles than Decidueye did, which is sometimes what's going to happen. But it gave me good type synergy. And it actually helped me in another aspect of team building it's less important, but it's still nice to keep track of, and that is your speed tiers. So when you're building for the actual matches, you're gonna notice your opponent's speed, and what you want to do is you want to have a good balance of speed in yourself, so that way your opponent can't say use more effort values to outspeed or outslow, depending on if it's more worth it for your team. Sorry, Garf. In regards to the draft, you can draft your roster in whatever order. Like, say you want 3 tier 1s, you can draft tier 1, free pick 1 as a tier 1, and free pick 2 as a tier 1, and you can do them all in a row. But you do have to have every single slot needs to be filled. And if we start running out of slots in the tiers, there might have to be. Well, we'll get to that when it happens. We'll do the draft stream, and we'll go over what would happen in such a scenario. So back to speed tiers. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. So here on the Mon data, I happen to have a nice list of every speed of every Mon, every stat of every Mon, and in order to get a good balance, here's what I suggest. You want to have at least one Mon with a speed of 115 and higher. Now, see, you have stuff like Jolteon that's base 130. You have Mega Manectric, which is 135, I believe. Yeah, Mega Manectric is 135. Ninjask is 160. You might not have to worry about that as much. But a high speed stat like 115 or 120 in some cases. Actually, 120 is preferable because it forces a Pokemon with a base 130 speed to have to run Timid or Jolly in order to outspeed guaranteed the 120 base Mon. So like pretend Dugtrio versus Jolteon. Jolteon is going to have to run a Timid nature in order to outspeed Dugtrio, and or to not die from it. So typically between 115 and 120, if not further, is a good speed tier to hit. I like speed tier between 100 and 110, between 80 and 90, between 60 and 70. Between 70 and 80 isn't as important, but if you get a Mon at like low 80s, like say Gyarados and Melodic have 81, and then you drop off to like 70 with Breloom, that's a good combo. Or even something like base 65, like Kamala. It's not going to make a big difference in nature or effort values in all realities. Another good speed tier to hit, it's not as important, but between 40 and 50 Some of those mons are a little more rare. You get stuff like here's Lurantis, Machamp is in this range, just a little bit out of, but it's still nice to have, especially because the bottom speed tier is pretty much 30, and a lot of these mons are going to be the offensive mons are going to have Trick Room support. So you want to have a slower mon in order to help combat maybe a Trick Room core. So just stuff like that to keep in mind. Mudsteel 35, Musharna 25, and again you can find all these stats on the Mon data page of the league document. But there are other ways of speed control other than just having good speed tiers. You know, there's stuff like sticky webs. There's Tailwind. Choice Scarf exists. So there are multiple ways to get around these speed tiers, and it's going to be up to you on a weekly basis to keep track of these and build your teams accordingly, because the difference between outspeeding or outslowing a certain mon or outbulking on the other side of the spectrum can be the difference between victory. So the last thing that I do want to bring up in regards to this, especially your draft, your Z-Mons. So throughout the course of the season, you're going to have 2 Z-Mons at all times. You're allotted to switch 2 Z-Mons out for 2 other Z-Mons over the course of the season. Of course, they all have to come from your roster. You can pick your Mega as a Z-Mon, however, you can't have it hold a Z-Crystal. Your Mega has to hold a Mega Stone, no matter what, so it's not worth it. So you can pick between any of your other 10 Mons, and you can pick 2 Z-Crystal users. Out of that, typically you'll see a Z-Crystal user be either heavily offensive, sometimes setup, or really useful support. So every passive or non-attacking Z move has a secondary effect. For instance, a common one is you have Z Parting Shot, Z Memento, that heal the next Pokemon coming in. So those 2 are really useful. Sometimes you have setup moves that have good Z potential. You have Z Rain Dance, which raises speed +1, Z Sunny Day, Z Sandstorm, that have the same effect. However, noted here on the rules, Omni boosting Z moves such as Z Conversion, Trick or Treat, Happy Hour, Celebrate, and Extreme Evo Boost, that is Z Last Resort on Eevee, they're banned. You can't use them, sorry. That's for the sake of especially Z Conversion. If a person has Porygon Z, you can convert to whatever type and have +1 everything. A lot of those are hard to counter in team building, so people smarter than I have decided that they're not good, they're not healthy for a draft league. So I shall go along with their brains and say we're not going to use them. Some more stuff to note about your team page. Here, your team name is linked to the rosters. Your name is going to be linked to the rosters. Your team abbreviation linked to the rosters. You can find all these stats. They match up with your box scores of whatever week. Obviously, you can check your type coverage, whatever abilities you have. Now, some abilities are banned. Some Pokemon are banned. All the bans can be found on the Mon data page. For instance, we'll scroll down here to the bottom for a second. Zygarde, Power Construct is banned. I know Shadow Tag, Gothitelle is banned, which Gothitelle, as a result, fell... Where is she? Tier 4? Is it Tier 4? Or is it Tier 5? Tier 5. Gothitelle's in here somewhere. Yeah, here it is, Tier 5. So, no Shadow Tag Gothitelle. Let's see, what else to note. MVP race, kind of cool if you want to take a look at it. What moves get the most kills throughout the course? What Pokemon get the highest game score? Which is a formula that I made up. And I used it in a previous league, and it seemed to work out pretty well. So that should be that. I think that is it for this page. We brought up the niche page. Feel free to use it as much as you want. Standings page probably going to have to change based on the format that we were going to do. Schedule is going to change. Tiers and availability exist. And of course, you can find all of your opponents' player pages as well as their defensive prowesses, how good their mons are doing this season, etc. So that is going to be it for me right now. Again, I want to say thank you to all of you who signed up to join. I hope y'all have a lot of fun. We do still have, as of this exact moment, 2 slots open. As you can see, we're at 14 out of 16. So if you have any friends or you know anybody else who wants to sign up, feel free. Link is, once again, on the PSR Discord. Scheduling is going to be done on the PSR Discord. I have some volunteers who are willing to help. They'll help me with scheduling and document upkeep. And hopefully we'll have a fun time. So thank y'all, and I hope to see you next Saturday. Pretty much around this time, actually. Next Saturday, actually it'd be 2 hours earlier from now, for our actual draft. And I will post, we're going to do a random team draft. We're going to use random.org to find our draft order and which team gets placed either in which division or who you're going to not face. So whatever your schedule is going to be, we're going to do that randomly right before the draft. So regardless, I hope you all have fun, and I will see you all later.